Welcome to our second Ask the Expert Q&A, where you can ask questions and get answers from experts on different PSC topics. My name's Maxine Tapp, and I'm the Programme Development Officer for PSC Support and also a liver transplant patient. I'm joined with Martine Walmsley, who's also a PSC patient, and she is PSC Support Chair of Trustees. And we're delighted to be joined by Dr Kathy McKay today to talk about PSC and Wellbeing. So if you've got any questions, please put them in the comments below. We'd also love to hear any thoughts that you might have throughout the discussion or any solutions to the questions that are being asked. So just feel free to chip in and comment whenever you want. So welcome, Kathy.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you for joining us. It's amazing that you're giving up your time to do this discussion with us. We're very thankful. So just to begin, would you mind just telling us a little bit about yourself, a bit of your background?
Sure. I'm Australian and I moved to London about 3 years ago. And I work at the Tavistock and Portman NHS Foundation Trust. I'm a mental health researcher, and I've been basically doing work that's all about people going through different experiences and their life changing irrevocably, sort of the next day, essentially, and how people live through that and live well after that. And I met you both when we worked on the PSC and Wellbeing Study last year, or did we start the year before?
Seems a long time ago.
Time is so strange. And so I was lucky enough to work with you guys and other people within PSC support, looking at well-being after a diagnosis.
So we're very lucky to have you and your expertise with us this evening. So well-being in PSC is a really important topic. I think being diagnosed and living with PSC creates a lot of different challenges and experiences for people. And as patients, we know the impact on well-being is huge, and it's something that PSC support is passionate about improving for PSC patients, but also family members as well, because it affects everybody. A few years ago, PSC Support conducted the first survey asking about the emotional burden. We also started the development of the first PSC quality of life measure, which is a validated way of asking somebody with PSC how they're doing. So then after that, we initiated and funding the PSC Wellbeing project, which you just talked about. And so that's a research study. And with that study, we really wanted to understand how PSC affects well-being and the true lived experience of PSC. So, Kathy, you were one of the study investigators. What are some of the key things you found out through the PSC Wellbeing Study?
That there's so much anxiety and uncertainty that's linked to having that diagnosis, especially because for so many people, they have these stories of the such a long time prior to diagnosis as well. So people have been sick for ages and not necessarily been listened to for a long time as well. So there's a diagnosis that gives an answer, but the answer is, as you both know, and as everyone who's listening knows, comes with anxiety, comes with uncertainty, because there isn't a cure yet, and there's not a lot of we're still learning, sort of about how to treat it medically. So that kind of understanding how to support people during those periods of anxiety and uncertainty and navigating those different solutions, different sort of practices of well-being is really, really important.
Yeah, and I think you've really hit the nail on the head there with the word uncertainty. I think you've touched on it yourself just in what you just said, that when you get diagnosed, it can come as a huge shock. There's also sometimes a bit of relief that you finally got an answer to what's going on, but even so, there's still shock, and it's a lot to take in. And one of the most common questions we get asked is about the future. Am I going to need a transplant? Am I going to die? And that there's a lot of uncertainty with PSC, not just those two things, but everyday uncertainty as well. So I guess the first question is, what tips would you give to somebody who is living with a great deal of uncertainty or trying to process a shocking diagnosis like PSC?
I think the first thing is that it's okay to feel what you're feeling, especially in that aftermath. Like you're allowed to feel shocked by a shocking thing, you know, and to feel grief for what the diagnosis can bring, the things that you might not be able to do in the future, or the things that you've lost, but you know, because of it, you know, while you've been sick. You know, those feelings are absolutely valid, and I think as a society we're not always good at letting people, like allowing people to feel sadness and loss for things that are sad and for things that are lost. And it is about being able to sit with those emotions and process them, and also being able to have people around you who will sit with you in that rubble, essentially, and be with you, and to be able to step by step figure out what to do next, and what is going to make you feel better, sort of step by step, day by day, and not being made to feel that anything that you feel is, you know, oh, you should be more positive, or, you know, there shouldn't be a should. There is sort of validating what you're feeling, and then figuring out what you need and what support you need, what you know, what you need to feel better afterwards, and in the coming days and months and weeks, and you know, and in years, to navigate those things together.
That's really so true, and we've actually had 2 questions in already that relate to exactly what you've just said. So Emily's asking what is the best way to support someone that's got PSC, but she also asked, her boyfriend has got PSC, and she's wondering how soon a liver transplant may be needed. And I think this brings us to this element of uncertainty where we don't have enough information, and we need information. And actually the answer to that is that you know, less than half people with PSC need a transplant. Obviously I'm not a doctor, but that's one of the first questions we get asked on the helpline, is literally, am I going to die, or am I going to need a transplant? And it's so difficult to process.
Yeah, and there's so many not answers that we don't have yet as well, and I'm sorry that I can't give those answers as well. You know, it is kind of just acknowledging that it's an awful place to be in, and there's no kind of prettying that up. You know, it is just about figuring out, you know, having resources like PSC support, where you can have that peer support, and you can sort of connect with people who, you know, have similar experiences, similar symptoms, you know, have been, you know, not necessarily the same at all, but, you know, similar enough to recognize that there are other people that, you know, are having those experiences too, and, you know, they found ways through it, and, you know, that knowledge that, you know, other people can, and you know, that helps to know that you can too.
Yeah, and our Facebook the Facebook group itself is amazing. The people on there, the support they offer to one another, it's incredible. You know, even when people are going through really difficult times, they're always there to have a chat and just listen to other people. So that's a really good source of support.
Well, we saw it in how people participated in the study. The generosity of people, you know, who told us their stories was amazing. So, like, seeing that community and hearing about it is a beautiful thing, and that type of community, especially in these sorts of situations, can't be underestimated. That's so important.
Yeah, and I think I always say there's nothing more powerful than speaking to someone who's been there or who is there now. You know, it's so valuable. I guess on the flip side of that, we've had one question that was sent in to us. Since I was diagnosed with PSC, I have found it hard to communicate how I feel emotionally to people. Is there a good way of doing this? So I guess that's people who may not understand wholly what you're going through.
I mean, there's no right way to do anything in so many ways, you know, because it's going to be your words and your experience. I think it is, especially when you're navigating something so new yourself as well, there is to be able to articulate that and talk about your feelings in a way that's really honest and really open, and maybe finding even finding one person to practice talking about how you feel to, even if it's just one person that you can be completely wonky with. I think that can be really important, to be able to have to be able to say, actually, I don't, this, you know, I'm not sure how I feel, because some people might not as well, because it's a big thing to take in, and there are days that are better and days that aren't. And I think just trying to be okay with the fact that you might not always have the words, and trying to maybe have that one person that you can not have the words with sometimes too, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I guess practice makes perfect. It's like a rehearsal, really, with somebody you feel comfortable with, to just try and process in your mind yourself how to communicate those thoughts that are going on. And it's not easy. I don't think it's easy at all. But yeah, that's a really good point, actually, to sort of sit with someone you can find it easier to communicate with and you are comfortable with, and then go from there.
And it kind of changes over time as well, doesn't it? So when I was first diagnosed, it was massive, a big deal. It took over every thought for me, my husband, you know, what was going to happen. And it was like front and center of everything. And as time goes by, that big PSC, it kind of dissipates a little bit, and it's not so front and center. And because I just felt the need to tell everybody and announce it to everybody, and not everybody cared or was interested or understood the, you know, how major, what a life-changing thing that was. So that kind of feeling of how you communicate changes. So I might have a practice later as well.
What you're saying makes me think as well of how, you know, and what the story that you tell is going to be different to someone that you love, you know, family versus work versus person, you know, and you don't owe your story to anyone either. Like, you know, I mean, there are times that you're going to have to tell and going to have to disclose, but you don't owe your story to anyone either. Or, you know, you can tell as much of your story to people as, you know, I think.
That kind of makes me, sometimes you do feel like you need to tell it because so much is invisible and you almost want to justify why you're so, that's for me personally anyway. And I have this like little voice going, yeah, but you know, I am tired, I am really tired like this, and then I feel like I'm going on at people if I start talking about it. But I do definitely feel like I want to justify these invisible, you know, my behaviours because of these invisible symptoms, and I'm sure I'm not the only one.
Well, that makes sense.
Yeah. And Kathy, you talked earlier about that sort of we're not very good at saying, actually, I'm not okay, or we feel like we can't say it. And we've had another question relating to that. And the question is, how can you respond to how are you when you feel awful? Is it okay to say you're not good? No, I'm not okay.
Yeah, it is. Like, it is, because we need to be able to have those conversations. We need to not be okay. you know, like I mean, if lockdown has taught us anything, there are days we're definitely not okay. Things are, you know, when life is hard, you're allowed to feel a bit wonky. I think it is sometimes, I mean, in saying that, I'm a firm believer in that you tell people if you're not feeling great, then, you know, I'm not feeling great. But also there are always going to be people who won't react well to that. So sometimes it is making a bit of a judgment about whether you're up for a negative response or a nothing response. But if it is where to say, actually, I'm not okay, I need you to sit with me for 10 minutes, or, you know, I need to have a cry, or I need a coffee, or if saying that you're not okay is actually, you know, for you is going to lead to just a little bit of pressure releasing, that's a beautiful thing. That's really positive, because, you know, having those little pressure valves release, like, becomes really important in, you know, for long-term well-being as well.
We've had another question off the group from Gillian, and she's saying, so it relates to this about what you disclose. I'm recently diagnosed, I have a busy working life, and the question I have is on the impact of PSC on my career. I've had to take some time off as I've had a flare-up with the condition, and I don't really want to tell work colleagues that I've got a chronic condition, yet maybe I'll need to ask them to be flexible with me. So what would you advise about that? So it's a question, I guess it's a question of what you disclose and to whom.
I feel that this is where you guys have a lot more experience of this than I do. I mean, I think for long-term well-being, even if you just told one key person in your workplace that this is what, this is something that you need to, work with, and have, and it's going to affect your work. And so you've got that leeway to have that flexibility, to have that understanding. That feels really important. But then I can imagine that other people would have had different experiences and would have different advice to that as well.
I wonder if it would help if like actually we told the employer. So if we made a leaflet that said, this is PSC, these are the kind of symptoms people have, most carry on working through it, and we did a really nice balance leaflet that would you could hand to an employer. I wonder what, if anyone's listening on the group, let me know, because we can certainly look at doing that.
Yeah, because sometimes you don't want to talk about it, as much as sometimes you need to. Sometimes you also don't want to. So having a piece of text that you can give to somebody and you just say, look, this is what's going on. I don't really want to discuss it, but I need you to know. Sometimes that's easier than talking it through.
Yeah.
Well, having that kind of leaflet, just even with family, if you just sort of say, look, this has just happened, this has happened to me, here's a piece of paper, give me a week and I'll talk about it. Sometimes a piece of paper is quite nice.
Yeah, definitely. And so on the flip side of all of this, discussing how you're feeling and having this life-changing diagnosis, we've also had a question which is from the flip side of that, so from a family member or a friend of someone with PSC. And the question is, what are the right words to say to somebody who's had this life-changing news?
Again, there aren't right words. I mean, it is kind of almost dealing with a grief in some ways as well. And there aren't right words for that. It is just about being present and saying, and sometimes it is just about saying, look, this is awful. I'm so sorry, it's awful, but I'm here to sit with you or to be with you or to talk with you or be silent with you or, give you casserole. It's very Australian. Kind of having, I think just being available feels very important sometimes in these situations, and being able to hold that story and to whatever the person wants to tell you and feel safe in telling you, just to hold that and to be a safe person to talk to. That can be incredibly important in situations like this.
Sometimes people want to be able to fix something for you, don't they? And there's no fix.
And that's okay. That's okay. Not hopefully there's a cure soon, but it's okay to not be able to fix things. It's because there are things that aren't necessarily fixable, and just being able to sit with that and be safe for that person in that space feels, that you're not kind of charging in there saying, but have you tried this and this and this, which 3 years, 4 years down the track, I can imagine would be deeply irritating at times.
We've all had it.
Yeah, I think as well, you've sort of touched on it yourself, but it's asking somebody what they need or what they want, and even if it's nothing, I don't need anything, I just need you to know, it's just, like you say, being available and just knowing that somebody's there and they want to help is sometimes enough. So once people get the diagnosis, sometimes people can start to experience low mood, and some of the symptoms that come with PSC can sort of contribute to this. So people experience insomnia, fatigue, and things like that. So in terms of low mood, are there any signs that people can look out for, any sort of like warning signs to notice it yourself, or for other people to notice if someone is experiencing low mood?
I think, like, listening to people's stories, I think it sounds like as well, it's about differentiating feeling low because of, especially after the diagnosis, feeling low because of that, which is very situational, versus if that lingers for longer and becomes something that doesn't let you to function as well as you want to. So in that, I think it is about either recognizing in someone else or recognizing in yourself whether the things that you like to do, if they're not bringing you joy and that's outside, then that feels outside just the, the sort of symptoms of PSC, because, like you said, with tired, with fatigue and insomnia, that's going to impact on that. But if it goes beyond that, where something that is just quite, not being able to enjoy things, not being able to see hope, is quite indicative of depression as well. So being able to recognize things that don't feel attached to a diagnosis and feel like they are going to impede on you sort of moving through and living well with the diagnosis, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And sort of on that note, really, if somebody is experiencing that and they're finding that they're not able to get access to psychological support, what sort of things can somebody do for themselves, perhaps, to sort of manage that?
I'm a big believer in sort of accessing there's lots of really great mental health podcasts at the moment that are really good in kind of talking through other people's experiences of living through depression or living through anxiety or sort of other traumatic experiences, and those can be sort of, I think sometimes hearing those different lived experiences can be useful, even if it's not the exact same lived experience. There's always tools that you can get from other people, which is, I mean, obviously this is if sort of, counselling or sort of psychological support is something that's not available. And just, I think kind of sort of I think accessing, the good parts of social media where there are really good sort of mental health spaces to talk through, and someone like Matt Haig is really great for talking through his experiences of depression, and just those little tips and tools that you can get from those spaces, and like might just be able to kind of sort of see you through until you're able to access sort of more support if that's what's needed. And just again finding just a safe person to be able to talk to and to just work through some of those feelings as well. Like there is something kind of wonderful in being able to just kind of say to a friend or someone that you trust that I'm just feeling a bit off, I'm not sure what it is, but I'm going to keep an eye on these feelings, and could you just keep an eye on on me as well during this. So it is about kind of those little tricks and those little things, just to find a few moments in the sunshine, or to spend some time with your kids or your pet, or those those little moments of sunshine and happiness to kind of buoy you until you're able to access something, if that's what something more professional, if that's what's needed.
Yeah, and actually it would be really great if you could share some of those podcasts with us, and we can link them when we share the recording of this video. That would be amazing.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you. So we had another question sent in to us. During this lockdown, I've really struggled with my mental health. I suffer with PSC and autoimmune hepatitis. How can I stop myself feeling anxious about the future?
Lockdown's really hard. Oh my God. I think sometimes with lockdown particularly, sometimes you do need to switch off. Like I know for me personally, when this first happened, I was on Twitter the whole time. I was watching all the news things. I was kind of so head first into all of this. And I think that can be really overwhelming. And the last few weeks, in the last few days, have been incredibly emotionally overwhelming. So I think if you are finding that kind of being in those social media spaces is kind of piquing that anxiety and piquing that unhappiness, then sometimes it is good to take a bit of a break, or just mute a few, mute sort of different things if they're just not doing you any good. And it is just kind of acknowledging as well that it's a really tricky time, and so trying to find little things that do kind of buoy you along, even if they don't fix things or make things, you know, 100%, but if they just pick you up just for that next hour or that next day, whether it's you know, baking something or you know, binging a Netflix series or whatever, all those things, because I know with PSC a lot of you have been shielding as well, so it's not just going for a walk. You know, it is just trying to find those little things just to get you through, and to just go day by day, you know, step by step, and figuring that out, which
it's about being kind to yourself, I think, and
very
doing
much.
It's hard to get yourself into that sort of frame of mind sometimes, but it's necessary.
Oh, absolutely. And especially when at the start of the lockdown, there was so many things going around about how, you know, this is the time for you to write your book and, you know, write King Lear. It's just like, no, stop that. No, this is the time to be super kind to yourself, and, you know, sit in your window in the sunshine, you know, for half the day, if that's what's going to get you through, you know. It is, like you said, Maxine, being really kind to yourself, because this is, I mean, even mental health experts don't know how to get through a pandemic. We've never done it before. You know, like, you know, all of us are learning together with this, and how to just survive this, you know, as best we can, and then sort of do the best we can throughout this.
I guess in a way that the general populations had a taste of life-changing news and being restricted about what they can do.
Yeah.
It's very humbling.
It is. So the lockdown restrictions have started to ease slightly this week, and even for people who are shielding now, we're being told that we are allowed to sort of go out for a walk and sort of leave the house for the first time in a long time. And that's quite overwhelming. I've been shielding myself, and I've had to go out for a few appointments and stuff, but when I do go out, it's really overwhelming. So from going to being completely confined to your own home, and then stepping out of your front door with all of this sort of, you're being told all the time about the risk, and just that overwhelming feeling of, okay, is this safe? It's quite scary. So how can someone manage that transition?
I think it is about following your GP's advice, because if they should have sort of more up-to-date things about what they think is best for you individually, because they would have had to send out shielding letters. I know that there are lots of people still saying be very careful still. I know Sadiq Khan has been saying that a lot for London, to still keep those, you know, social distancing things quite sort of, to do that well and to keep doing those things. Having said that, it is strange to go outside. I've only been going outside for sort of volunteering, or, you know, groceries, and like you, Maxine, I've felt that same kind of, oh, okay, you know, just being very alert and aware of things. But it is, I think, if you do have to go outside, or if you do want to go outside, and it is, you know, GP has said it's safe to do so, and you sort of want to, it is about just making sure that it's comfortable for you. Like, you don't have to go to Hyde Park if you don't want to. If walking around the block, you know, during in quite a bit of where you live is, if that's enough and you do that and that feels safe, that's great. You know, you don't have to be outside, you know, as much as anyone else if that's not what you know. It is about finding what's most comfortable for you, and doing it in a way that feels comfortable for you. So whether that's, you know, going outside for an appointment, or a purposeful trip where it feels a bit, you know, sort of more justified. So for me, that always lessens my anxiety, because I feel like, well, I have to do this is okay. You know.
Yeah.
It's not me larking about, you know, you know, and so we're just finding those little things to just dampen down the anxiety, and doing whatever you need to make yourself feel as safe as possible. And at the end of the day, if that is to not go outside for a little while longer, if that's what's going to make you feel most sort of safe and secure in yourself, then that's okay too.
It's definitely, it's about personal choice, and you know, the other side is there's people that they have been shielding and they've been in the four walls for all this time, and going out is a massive relief. So everyone's different, and like you say, we're all in different areas and there's different levels of risk in each particular local area, and it's a matter of using our own judgment at any one time.
Absolutely, it is, and it's very tricky as well when it is allowed to be, you know, completely personal to what you feel is safest and most secure for you. It's not just like, oh, we all have to go outside and do everything now. It is whatever is best, because you don't need any more anxiety. Oh my goodness.
No, exactly.
And we've had a couple of well, we're nearly at time, but I just wanted to ask a couple more questions because we've had some on the topic of transplant. So somebody's sent in a question, and it's I've had a transplant a while ago, and before lockdown I was finding it hard adjusting to work and social activities again. I think everyone thinks I'm fine now, and I feel like I should be, but I'm still struggling with my mental health. So how can I let go of the past and start to move forwards?
I think this is where maybe using this time to reflect on that, like you because at the moment you don't have to go out, you sort of, you're sort of, you don't have to go out at the moment, so it does give you a bit more time to figure out what sort of slowly what you feel safer doing, what you feel secure doing, and what your anxieties are with that. And sometimes there's a book by Sarah Wilson called First We Make the Beast Beautiful, and she talks about depression and anxiety particularly, and how naming the beast is can kind of take the fear away from it sometimes, because it's not something that's sort of this massive frightening thing. It then becomes, well, actually what I'm really worried about is this and this and this, and once you name them, then they become a bit more tangible to work with, and they become something that you can start talking about as well. And once that once you're able to start doing that, it becomes a bit more manageable because you are talking about it, you are naming it, and sometimes those little battles are easier, they're smaller, and giving yourself, like, I think, like, Maxine, you said before, it's just being kind to yourself as well, and acknowledging that, as long as you feel that you're moving forward in naming and sort of going through those the anxieties and identifying them and talking about them, as long as it feels like you're then moving forward in that process, and that's okay. Like, that's a good thing.
Yeah.
And Tim's asked a question along those lines, asking how can you get back to normal after transplant, and he's hit the nail on the head actually by putting normal in inverted commas.
Yeah.
And Maxine talked about this before as well, and it's like you say it's like a new normal, isn't it, Maxine?
Yeah, it's a really odd feeling, because I always say, when you're waiting for your transplant and that time before, when you're quite unwell and life's not really what you're used to being normal anymore, you're living in a bubble. That's how I like to describe it. Waiting for a transplant is like being in a bubble, and then all of a sudden you have your transplant, that bubble is burst, and you're sort of pushed back into normal again, and it's really hard to know how to sort of navigate your way through that and sort of figure out how you adjust and sort of bring yourself back into society again, I guess, for a lot of people, because if you've stopped working or you've been confined to your house quite a lot, much like lockdown, it's really hard. So yeah, it is normal in inverted commas. There is no normal, and life after transplant is new. It's a new way of living, and it does take a while to adjust.
Well, this is where, as well, in these ways, you are both far more the expert than I am too. And I think it is like trusting that you're the expert in how you're feeling and what you're experiencing too. Like, you really are. Everything I know, I've learned from you.
We learn from each other, I think, all the time.
Yeah, definitely. So time is up. We've actually gone over time, so sorry about that. But thank you so much, Kathy, for your time and your wonderful insights. It's really good to have some, you know, proper sort of tools that we can all go away with and sort of think about if we need to use them at any time. And we'll link the podcasts that you've recommended and the books and stuff so people can access those. It's been a pleasure talking to you. So just on the final note, Kathy, if you could have the last word and sort of tell us what your takeaway message is for somebody with PSC who's struggling.
You are all fantastic. You really are. Like, I'm in awe of the stories that I sort of heard from you, where you are dealing with things that, you know, a lot of people would find difficult to impossible. And so trust in your strength, because being strong isn't doing something, you know, magical and fantastical. Being strong is sometimes getting through every day, day by day. Like that can take enormous strength when you're living with symptoms, you know, that can be so difficult and so life altering. So trust in your strength and trust in your expertise and how you feel and how your body feels, and know that that's really valid.